Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Daily Ipswich. This is a crossover special. Today I am joined by the Daily Southampton boys. My name is Richard Popple and we have got Oscar and Greg from the Daily Southampton. Gentlemen, how are we?
Yeah, looking forward to maybe the most promising game of the season that's left, right?
Yeah.
Nice to have a competitive game for once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can both agree with that. It probably will be a competitive game given what both of us have had fairly recently. With that in mind then, are we thinking that this is the biggest game of the season? You're obviously 10 points behind Ipswich at the moment, marooned at the bottom. I mean, I was talking to the guys on the Ipswich pod the other day. I'm not sure if our squads are that different, to be honest. So I was kind of like wondering how, from the other side, you look at Ipswich. Do you see as being 10 points better than you, or is it just a kind of like combination of things that have dictated that you are where you are? Greg, let's start with you on that.
I think that it's hard to see anyone being worse than us and how we've been this season. It's been sort of it's been a hard one for sure. There are probably misserved by having as few points as we have. There are definitely games we deserve to get more out of than we did. A few decisions early on in the season that cost us points here and there, but I think realistically, we've said it on the podcast that at this point our main target's just got to be getting to 12 points and not being the worst team in Premier League history, and beyond that, anything else is a plus.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an interesting point because I was thinking the same thing when you look at our two squads. I think personally, had we got Delap over the line before you did, because I think we've been heavily linked with them for the last few years, I think it might have completely flipped where we are. We struggled to score goals, and that might have been the catalyst that sort of pulled us back up to where you guys are. And you know, who knows? But ultimately, that's not how it worked out, unfortunately.
Mm.
No, it's interesting. I mean, we got to Lap, and obviously we're very happy, and he's had a good year. But at the same time, we can't really score goals either outside of him. So we're having problems hitting the back of the net all year as well. So, Greg, as you just mentioned there, the goal would be to get 12 points to avoid that, unwanted record or whatever. That's it. Then you guys are resigned to kind of your fate at this stage.
I think so. I think that it would be a pretty deluded hope otherwise, although I guess mathematically speaking it was only this past week that it became impossible for us to win the league. But yeah, I think that most Saints fans are pretty confident that the season's more or less done, and to just try and not embarrass ourselves too much on the way down as we go.
Yeah, Oscar, where did it go wrong? Because like you both mentioned at the beginning, like you weren't losing games that badly. You've been slapped a couple of times at home. We've just been slapped a couple of times. We conceded 10 goals in the last 2 games. That kind of happens to promoted teams, whoever you are, really. So why has it gone so badly wrong?
I think it's like we spoke about fine margins. We've had times where things have gone against us, and small little moments in important games, such as the reverse fixture. That corner gets blocked, and all of a sudden it's a different game.
Yep.
And similar with Leicester, and decisions haven't helped us in small moments. As I say, we have been tonked a couple of times, but it's not been too often. So it's just been those small moments, really. So it's been frustrating, and I don't think we deserve to be where we are, but it is what it is.
What about the sort of like Russell Martin factor? Because obviously, from the outside, it's kind of the Ange Postecoglou thing, isn't it? A manager is being sort of lambasted constantly for having one way of playing football, and Russell Martin was very much that kind of guy with a lot of success before this season, obviously. So was it a case of, he didn't really have a plan B? Because one of the guys on our podcast talked about this the other day, that Ipswich aren't going to have that new manager bounce throughout the season because there's no way we're sacking Kieran McKenna, right? And that was never going to happen. Whereas every other club down the bottom have removed their manager. So Moyes at Everton, clearly that's going to keep them up probably. Wolves potentially not, and you guys potentially not. Maybe not Leicester either. But Was that a problem? Did he stay on too long, or would you have liked him to kind of stick around?
It's a tough one. Unfortunately, our manager bounce was a 1-0 loss to West Ham. So, whilst that is better than it has been, it's still not ideal. But I think it's a difficult one. Ultimately, have we, in terms of points, have we improved that much since Russell Martin went? That's a question you could ask. I admire that he tried to do things slightly differently. I was always slightly dubious in the Championship how effective that way of playing would be when we weren't one of the better teams in the league. But I think ultimately, Martin or not, do we have enough goals to be able to stay up anyway? And are we good enough defensively? Whether you've got Russell Martin or Pep Guardiola, I don't know whether it would have made a huge amount of difference if you can't score goals, because that's what our issue was the last time we were in the Premier League, and it's still the issue now, unfortunately.
Yeah. Greg, anything going on in the transfer window that might alleviate some of these issues, or is it a case of kind of standing pat now? They're just going to wait until the end of the season?
We bought in a young fullback who signed a pre-contract with us in the summer, who's come over from Brazil, Wellington, who I think we're going to see probably involved for the first time on Saturday. And we've signed Grombach, the Danish midfielder, and he's likely to be involved as well. Whether they're an unknown as to whether they'll step up to the level, I guess, but it is a bit of optimistic, a bit of hope, someone that can come in and do something, but I don't see us signing anyone at this point that's going to bring goals to the team, which, like Oscar said, I think is our main problem. I mean, our joint top goal scorer is Jan Bednarak, so says it all, really.
Yeah. How much did you guys spend in the summer?
We spent a good amount, but a lot of it was getting Harwood Bellis and Downs over the line and sorted from last year because they were loans. Ramsdale as well, obviously, was quite an important one, especially for how Russell Martin wanted to play. But to be honest, either way, with Bazunu picking up a big injury towards the end of last season, we needed another goalkeeper anyway. Archer, again, I think more one for the future, to be honest. So we spent a good amount, but unfortunately, I think to sign, as you guys found, to sign a striker that's going to be good enough to perform in the Premier League is the most costly part. And I think we would just I don't know the entire financial details behind it, but just outbid by you guys, or maybe you offer more wages or something like that. But yeah, we spent a good amount, but just maybe not in the areas that we needed to.
Yeah, interesting. So Ipswich at the weekend, we'll talk about we'll have a break in a second. We'll talk about the kind of like lineups and how we expect the teams to look. But obviously there was a bit of, and most of this was social media, which I, to be perfectly honest, don't pay much attention to, but there was a bit of a kind of like build up of a grudge match between Southampton and Ipswich last year. You know, the four sides going for the automatic promotions. You were obviously on that incredible run at one stage, which kind of faltered towards the end of the season before you went up in the playoffs. But there was that kind of like slight grudge match between the two sides. Leeds maybe a little bit more so with us, but that game at Portman Road last year where we, you know, that for us Ipswich fans, obviously that was the moment of the year, really, aside from actually going up itself. That was kind of like an iconic moment, that last minute winner. But it was a bit of a, obviously being on the other side for you guys, gutting. So how have you seen Ipswich from the other side? We were obviously away from the big league for a long time. Have you enjoyed watching a club like that come back, or has it been a bit like, you know, they're coming up with all the cash and all the rest of it and outbidding us for players like Delap? Greg, we'll go with you. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, I don't mind it. I like that it's a different name in the mix. Yeah, I think you surprised everyone with what you achieved last season, and sort of even in the midst of being where you were, there was a doubt that you would stay the course almost until sort of right near the end. But yeah, I think you've done well to get to where you are, and I guess it's interesting that it seems likely that the three of us that came up are likely to be the three that go back down again, and speaks volumes about what it's going to take to bridge that gap, especially, you know, like you guys spent as well as we spent, and it just doesn't seem to have quite been enough. But I mean, I don't know, have you guys given up hope for the season, or are you still thinking there's a chance that that you can catch one of the other teams in the midst to keep you there?
Yeah, I think there's a massive chance. I mean, obviously, there was a very low points total last year, wasn't there, to stay in the league? I think it was 27, 28 points, something like that. And that will probably be roughly around the same thing to stay up again. It's not going to be like a high total. I don't think 30 points might keep you in the league. So, yeah, I think we could easily do that. It's just whether the other sides continue to falter around us, really. Wolves are the key. I think, they're the ones. If they keep hold of Cunha, you would expect maybe they might just have enough to stay up. But if not, then obviously the other sides, well, I guess maybe not yourselves because of your position, but certainly Leicester and Ipswich could give it a good go. But yeah, it's been obviously incredible for us as kind of Ipswich fans to sort of see that journey. But you're right. What do you have to do to stay in this league? It just seems unbelievably weighted towards the other clubs when you see teams like Bournemouth and Brentford performing the way they are and the players that they've got now, because the budgets for these clubs that stay in the league year after year are just through the roof. It seems to be a battle that the sides coming up can't really compete with on a fair scale, really. Oscar, what have you thought about Ipswich's kind of like renaissance from afar?
Yeah, I think it fairly mirrors our own one from when we were down in League One.
Yeah,
and the resurgence from up there. So you always love to see it. And were I a neutral last season, I would have quite enjoyed seeing you up there with the big boys and sitting behind you and trying to chase you. I didn't enjoy it quite so much, but you're right about this year. Like, is it getting harder and harder? Like we're struggling to catch Derby's points total. And is that indicative of where the league quality is this now as opposed to where it was then? Is it getting harder each season? Like, it's just tricky. And I think with the PSR rules and things like that haven't helped matters either. So I think that's what affected us quite a bit as well. I think we struggled to spend. I know we did still spend some, but struggled to spend what we needed to because we can't afford. We spent a lot of money when we came down the first time. We couldn't afford to strengthen even further. So it does seem to be that gap's getting bigger, ironically, as a result of them trying to fix that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think, as Greg mentioned, if the three do go down that came up for the second year in a row, then it's going to have to be something that the authorities have a look at, really, because it's just becoming a bit of a problem. All right, that'll do for part one. In the second part, we'll come back and talk about how the teams will be lining up, hopefully for the weekend.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
And we are back on the Daily Ipswich. So, South visit Portman Road this weekend. It's a 3:00 kickoff on Saturday. It's a real shame, actually, it's not going to be on Sky Sports because it is a proverbial 6-pointer. Michael Oliver is going to be the referee for it, so there's going to be a lot of eyes on the game anyway. How are you guys you've been playing all right recently? I actually saw that, you played against Newcastle. You gave them a bit of a run for their money. We're obviously coming off a 4-1 defeat and a 6-0 defeat and a 2-0 defeat to Brighton. So 3 pretty abject performances in a row, really, where our team seems to be a little all over the place in terms of personnel and stuff. How do you see it this weekend? Are you coming into it with a little bit more stability, even though results haven't been great, Greg?
I don't know. It feels like we've been building up to a point where we might have a really good 90 minutes in us, but it's kind of felt like that all season and never really come to pass. I don't know about stability. I think we're probably going to play both our new signings and what that means for the shape and the sort of formation we go with. We're not entirely sure. I don't know. I think it'll be still a case of our new manager sort of trying to almost find the best 11 or just trying to find something that works and gets the ball in the goal. We're kind of starved up front for goals, and the goals seem to come from just about anywhere else on the pitch. So I don't know if it will be sticking to the same guns and hoping that it starts to work or changing it out completely. It's I think the vote is out.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you've scored 16 goals this year. We've scored 21, so we're the third lowest. Are we expecting goals at the weekend, Oscar? Are we both going to buck the trend?
I mean, I'm not so sure. I think the aim that Juric had when he came in was to make us a bit tougher to beat and a bit more Italian defending. And I don't want to look at how many goals we've conceded since he came in. I think it's sort of a last gasp for us this weekend and the next few weeks. If we're going to have a chance of staying up, we're going to find out over the next couple of weeks because we've got you guys and then we've got quite a few home games on the bounce, or it's going to be the nail in the coffin and sort of finishes off our season. You know, I'd like to think that we could do a bit of damage, but I just don't see where it comes from, to be honest. Again, we've said that Jan Bednarek's our second top scorer. I'm not sure that Tall Paul's goal scoring form lasted one game, so we'll just have to see whether he can take that into the next one, and that's probably, I'd say, where most likely our goals are going to come from. But it's tricky one.
Where do you see the weaknesses in the Ipswich team? Because obviously we have, as I mentioned, I know it was against Liverpool and City, but we have just conceded 10 goals in the last 2 games. We've been playing a back 5 for the last few weeks in a bid to kind of like solidify a little bit, and that worked for a while. We only lost 1-0 at Arsenal. We then beat Chelsea 2-0, which was obviously a fantastic result. But it's sort of been worked out a little bit by teams now. So we've obviously shipped these goals, and there's a talk amongst our fans that we'll be shifting back to the formation that was McKenna's formation, you know, throughout League One, the Championship, and earlier this season. That back 4, but with Leif Davis marauding off down the left-hand side and putting in crosses and stuff for us. So where do you think you can hurt us on Saturday?
That could be an interesting matchup, to be fair. If Leif Davis, because we've got Carl Walker-Peters on that side, well, at least at time of writing. And he also likes to try and get forwards. Sometimes he's been playing on the left at left back, to be fair. But so that could be an interesting battle. But in terms of trying to figure out where we can get at you, I mean, I don't know. The midfield battle could be quite interesting as well. How's Calvin Phillips been for you guys this season?
The midfield, yeah, that's the kind of area of the pitch where we, even though we have been conceding obviously goals in the last couple of weeks, that's been the area of the pitch which we've really struggled with. Jens Kajuste came into the side. Brentford were going to sign him at the start of the season, then turned him down. There was stuff around his medical that basically wasn't, you know, they weren't happy with or whatever. So we picked him up on loan from Napoli. And whenever he's played, he's been quality. Because we've basically got 3 central midfielders. We've got Sam Morsey, the captain, obviously, who scored, you know, the equaliser against you guys. We've got Calvin Phillips and Jens Kajuste. Calvin Phillips, you would have thought, if you'd have got him, the Calvin Phillips of 3 years ago, he'd have walked into the Ipswich team. But he's just not that player anymore. I don't know what it is. Physically, he doesn't get around the pitch particularly. His passing, I think, is pretty limited. He's quite similar to Sam Morsey in terms of like the profile of player. So if you play them together, you've got a very limited midfield which can't play through the lines. So yeah, midfield's been the problem for us, and Phillips hasn't quite been the signing we were hoping, really, because we've got great little wingers, and we've got obviously Delap up front, who's a handful for anyone. You know, Hutchinson, Broadhead. Now we've signed Philogene from Villa and stuff. We've got Enciso on loan from Brighton. From Brighton. We've got really good forward players, but we don't get the ball to them. So the midfield really has been a problem. And I think, given that it's the 29th of January, I think most Town fans are pretty surprised that that's not been the area that's been focused on in January. Maybe it will before the end of the window, but Phillips, to your question, and the midfield in general has been pretty disappointing, I would say.
Yeah, I must say, and there's a bias that comes behind it, because I've always felt that Ward-Prowse has been unjustifiably not given a chance in the England squad, and I personally think he's always offered just as much as Calvin Phillips, plus you've got the free kicks on top of it. So I know I've got a little bit of a bias against him, but yeah, I wasn't massively surprised to see him not do particularly well at West Ham or with you guys, to be honest, but
yeah.
Hey-ho.
Yeah, it'll be interesting where his career goes from here, really, because, you know, it's 2 years in a row, really, where he's not been pulling up trees at clubs where, in theory, he really should have done. What about Mr. Dibley? Is he going to still be there, Tyler Dibbling?
I think it's likely he'll still be with us, but he is out injured at the moment. probably for another couple of weeks, I think, from what we've seen. So unlikely to be there to make a dent, which will be a shame.
Yeah, it is. But you're confident you're going to keep hold of him by the end of the window?
This window, yeah. The next one, not so sure.
No, well,
I think the injury might have done us a bit of a favour, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, I think Spurs were one of the suitors, right? I mean, who wants to go to Tottenham right now? So, yeah.
That's the problem we're having. Who wants to come to us?
Well, I mean, I think we are, it seems, to a certain extent. I think the McKenna thing was very much getting players through the door. That might have helped with Liam Delap, to be honest. I think he's very good at talking up the project of Ipswich and obviously the track record and stuff. But yeah, the midfield thing, as I just mentioned, it is strange that we've not bolstered that yet. We were linked with Nemanja Matic earlier in the window, which is just like, do we want a 36-year-old who hasn't played in the Premier League for a couple? Is that really what we're looking for? I don't know.
Well, that could be a serious midfield three of Phillips, Morsey, and Matic.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they clatter into tackles, that's for sure. But whether they can get up and down the pitch or not is another matter. Yeah, all right. Any other things about the weekend in terms of how you expect to set up? I mean, it can go probably one of two ways, right? It's either going to be really cagey because you've got two sides that aren't confident, or it's that last chance saloon a little bit, because it's very much last chance saloon for you guys. And to be honest, on paper, it should be one of our easier games before the end of the season. That's not me saying that we're going to win at all, but it's just like, if you can't beat the bottom side at home, where are the wins going to come from, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So do you expect it to be cagey, or do you expect both sides to kind of go for it a little bit more? What do you reckon, Oscar?
Yeah, I'd like to see. I'd like to see them both go for it. I think everyone would. Nothing. I don't think a 0-0 helps either of us, to be brutally honest. No. So, and it was 3-3 the reverse game, isn't it? In the end, top of my head, or what was the draw anyway?
At your place, it was 1-1.
1-1. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was getting confused with the Leicester game. Yeah. So yeah, is it going to be high goal scoring? Not so sure, but I'd like to see again. I think we have to show, if we want have any chance of staying up, or at least fighting till the end of the season, we've got to show something. So yeah, I'd like to see us go for it. And if we go for it and we lose justifiably, we've said a few times over the last few weeks, what is a positive for us? If we go all guns out and we lose a game by the odd goal through a worldie or good play from the opposition, then it's acceptable, I think, at this point. So yeah, I'd like to see us give it a go, but I think at the moment you just don't know what team's going to turn up.
Yeah, what about you, Greg?
Yeah, I think exactly the same. If we can bring the pieces of quality that we've had the last 2 or 3 games and sort of piece it together into a complete performance, then we give ourselves a good chance. But historically, and very much so this season, we've seen ourselves show up against the bigger teams you wouldn't expect to put in a performance as brave as against. And when it comes to teams where we should be going for it and sort of aiming for that as to go for the jugular and take that as our opportunity, we just sort of don't, and we just kind of fall off and don't really do a lot. So I'm hopeful that we can take it as the big game that it is and come out all guns blazing, but I'm not sure I'm confident in that.
All right. Well, when we come back after a break, we'll have everyone's predictions, both for the weekend and for the rest of the season.
This podcast is brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasting, with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily Premier League wrap-up broadcasted in 5 different languages. It's your one-stop shop for your daily football fix, and you can find all podcasts on the GSPN network and all your usual streaming platforms. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day.
And we're back for the final part of today's show. So, I feel your guys' pain a little bit. I mean, I know we're not quite where you are, but, we're not far off. And I think in some respects, it's almost Ipswich have got more to lose than Southampton potentially at the weekend if the result goes against us. Obviously, it would give you a renewed sense of belief that you could pull off an amazing heist sort of thing. But for us, I think it really is like a must win. Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting to see if they can step up to the plate, really. Oscar, what are you actually thinking of the game? We talked about the type of game we think it might be. Have you got any predictions about how you think it might go down?
I'm going to go a rare predicted win, and it's more out of hope than anything else. So I'm going to go for a 2-1. A 2-1. I reckon we go 2 up, and then you guys pull back, and then it's a cagey last 10 minutes. That's more purely out of optimism, nothing else.
You got any scorers? Is Jan Bednarek going to get on the score sheet again?
Yeah, let's give Jan Bednarek a goal, and then we've scored quite a few. I think own goals for the other team must be quite high up on our list of top scorers as well. So let's go for Jan Bednarek and an own goal.
Nice. Greg, what about you?
Yeah, well, I find myself in a funny position where I've not predicted a Saints loss all season, and subsequently I'm very rarely correct with my predictions. But yeah, I'm feeling optimistic too. I think I'm feeling even more optimistic. I'm going to say a 3-1 win, and I think Tallpool's going to get on the score sheet, and we're going to start seeing some striker goals coming into play.
Is that just you shooting from the hip, or do you really think you're going to come in and knock us off 3-1?
I think it's more blind optimism than anything at this point, to be fair.
Look, I mean, it might happen. It might happen. Interesting that you've not predicted Southampton to lose at all this season.
Yeah. Just it's the process, is the cycle. Is you feel dejected after you lose. You go through the whole week of podcasts, and by the time it gets to predictions again on Thursday and Friday, you are straight back in, feeling optimistic and hopeful that you're going to get that performance and turn the season round.
Yeah, I love it. What did you guys predict before the season started? Where were you? Where were you?
I'll let you go for this one.
I predicted us to finish 12th.
Did you?
in our league predictions at the start of the season? So the irony of aiming for 12 points at this point of the season is not fully lost on me either. So,
Oscar, what about you?
I probably would have. I would have said just a scrape to stay up, and again, maybe that was heart talking more than head, but and a fight to stay up with a view to maybe building on it next season. I thought we would be much more competitive than we are, but I did think we would be in and around it. It basically depended on what we did in the summer, and I don't think we necessarily did enough. So, yeah, I think I'm not massively surprised where we are, but I thought we'd be more competitive than we have been.
Yeah. I mean, look, you can't go into, even if your clubs are at the bottom like ours are, you can't go into a season thinking predicting you're going to go down or whatever, are you? That's the beauty of being a football fan. You've got to kind of go with it. I was even worse than you, Greg, to be perfectly honest. I went for Ipswich to finish 10th before the start of the season. I was just I was just convinced. I drunk the Kool-Aid of McKenna, and I kind of still have. I think he's a fantastic manager. And I thought the business that we were doing was really, really exciting. And I just thought we would catch teams off guard. And unfortunately, it hasn't panned out that way. And I think because we got this is the thing about the weekend as well. We've been awful at home this season. Like, most of our points really have come away from home. We've won once, apart from the Chelsea game. Obviously, that was a great game. And we've picked up a couple of good points at home against Villa and United. But generally, we've lost some horrendous games at home. Particularly to sides down, near the bottom and stuff. So that's a big thing for us to turn around, a good chunk of the way into the season for this game. So that does give you guys a little bit of hope potentially. But yeah, I went for 10th. That's not going to happen. I still think we might stay up just, and I think we will win this weekend. I'm actually going to reverse yours, Greg. I'm going to go for 3-1. I think we need to release the hounds, which are our tricky wingers. We really need to get them on the ball and let them just run. And I predict that that's going to happen this weekend. So I'm going to go for 3-1.
Nice. Yeah. I can see any of those playing out. It's such an unknown.
I agree. Yeah.
But then I guess the saving grace of our predictions of the rest of the season, of you predicting 10th and me predicting 12th, is that I don't think any Spurs fans were predicting 15th either. So we can take that as a win.
Yeah. Are they in a relegation scrap?
It's pretty close too. Not a million miles away, right? It's only a couple of wins and a couple of losses for them away from it being a real question.
Yeah, I thought that Leicester would win. There was just something about that weekend. I was like, I think Leicester will go there and win. They're just in free fall at the moment. It's mad, isn't it?
Fascinating.
Yeah.
We're the only team to have made them look good this season.
Oh yeah, you had a bad result at home. Well, that's Spurs, though, isn't it? Jekyll and Hyde. They play Man City. They look like the best team in the world. It's really, really strange. Anyway, all right, guys. Well, look, good luck for the weekend. Are either of you going to the game?
No, I'm not this
Unfortunately
weekend.
not.
Unfortunately.
No, sadly not myself either. But let's hope it's a good one. Let's hope both sides sort of go for it a little bit more. Let's see a bit of kind of drive from those wingers for us, and maybe some of your attacking players get on the score sheet. But thank you, Oscar.
Competitive championship match.
Yes, a good competitive championship match. We'll probably see you next year. Exactly.
Most
cheers,
likely.
guys. Appreciate you coming on, and good luck for the weekend.